Oh, yeah, here we go. 306 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Congressman Pat Fallon from the Oversight Committee joins us at 4 o'clock today. We'll talk about what's next for the Biden crime family. Chris Elston is here at 4:30. You know him as Billboard Chris on Twitter. He'll react to the hearing in Congress today as people who have had their lives destroyed by radical gender ideology got a chance to speak up to Congress about why this atrocity needs to end in America. And Mike McCormick is here at 5:30, the former stenographer for Joe Biden, who says he had a front row seat to that family's corruption. It's all ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. The White House today distancing itself from Hunter Biden.
I've said this before, this is a personal matter. This is Hunter Biden, as you know, is a private citizen, and this was done in an independent way. This investigation is being led by a Trump-appointed prosecutor.
We don't even know him. Hunter who? Never heard of him. He's a private citizen. The White House has nothing to do with him other than the fact that they're providing taxpayer-funded motorcades and taxpayer-funded Secret Service to accompany him around every corner and into every room. Other than that, he's a private citizen. We have nothing to do with it. Well, also other than the fact that he's the son of the president of the United States, and other than the fact that the father has been enriched, and then, of course, other than the fact that the father has been, of course, the vehicle through which all of this money has been made in the first place. Other than that, we have nothing to do with Hunter Biden. It's Corinne today. Additionally, Corinne told another lie. She said that Joe will not pardon Hunter Biden. She said it with certainty today.
Okay. Let me go back to the first question of the briefing. I know you said not a lot's changed since yesterday and that it's a personal matter, but from a presidential perspective, is there any possibility that the president would end up pardoning his son?
No.
No, she said. And of course, just mark down the date. What are we at? July 27th. This will come back to haunt her, assuming she has a conscience of any kind. That is a lie. And Joe Biden will, of course, in some point pardon Hunter Biden. So again, let's save the audio. Let's squirrel that away in a file that's easily accessible so that we can play it again when I can share with you the breaking news on some near afternoon that a pardon has been issued for one Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden. Now, what happened yesterday inside of that courtroom? We've had a chance to digest some of it. And this morning I was, as I so often do, just reading. I was reading through all of the stuff that became available overnight. And I'm grateful today that someone leaked to Politico the language in the plea deal. So you remember, as of yesterday, when we were talking about what happened in that courtroom in Delaware, we didn't actually have the language of the plea deal. Today, we do. In fact, there were two documents that were laid out before the court and are now visible to the public by way of Politico. One of them is the proposed plea agreement that involves the tax charges, the misdemeanor tax charges for the failure to pay millions of dollars in taxes on time, willfully failing to pay that money. Additionally, there's another document that is the diversion agreement. That document was designed to basically make the gun charge go away. Yes, we'll hit you with a felony charge for lying to us about your drug use on a gun background check form. But if you keep your nose clean, the whole thing goes away. And this is fundamentally what we understood the deal to be, right? Leading up to yesterday, that there would be the two misdemeanors for the taxes and then the one diversion agreement for the felony for the gun charge, meaning that there essentially will be no felony. It'll be erased and everything will be fine for Hunter Biden. No jail time, a couple of wrist slaps, and we all go on our merry way. So when Hunter and his team were arriving at that courthouse yesterday, that is what they expected. But boy, were they in for something different. Because the federal judge, Judge Mary Ellen Noreika, did something that we haven't seen many people do in this day and age, which is her job. She just asked questions. She wanted to know, how does this plea arrangement work? What are you pleading guilty to? What are you being given in exchange for your guilty plea? These are basic questions. And one of the things she noticed is that these two documents, they were puzzle pieces that fit together in very interesting ways. The plea agreement didn't have a single detail in it about preventing Hunter from being prosecuted in the future. There was no non-prosecution agreement inside of the plea document. No, instead, the non-prosecution element was inside of the diversion agreement. That's the second document. And the judge thought this was bizarre. Wait a second. Shouldn't this be a part of the plea agreement? Why is this in this diversion agreement? And she was told over and over, basically, don't you worry yourself with that second document. That diversion agreement, that's just basically an arrangement between Hunter and the Justice Department. It barely concerns you. Very, very little of it concerns you. The only thing you need to do here is sign off on the plea deal. That's it. But she kept asking the obvious questions. And how do we know this? Well, the transcript came out overnight of the entire court proceeding. You can read through all of it yourself. It's fascinating. And she, annoyingly, to all of the lawyers in the room, keeps asking, well, how can you do this? How can you have this non-prosecution agreement over here? Shouldn't that be a part of the plea deal? And they kept saying, no, don't you worry about it. And then she read the language of this thing, the language of the non-prosecution agreement. And I'm gonna read it to you now to understand just how sweet of a deal Hunter Biden was in for. It's contained in what's called paragraph 15, because as it's denoted, it's got the number 15, and they refer to it in the court proceedings as paragraph 15. And keep that phrase in mind because this becomes infamous. Paragraph 15, and the header is agreement not to prosecute. Agreement not to prosecute. And here's what it says. The United States agrees not to criminally prosecute Biden outside of the terms of this agreement for any federal crimes encompassed by the attached statement of facts that is in Attachment A. Attachment A, once again, is the diversion agreement. So they said there's a statement of facts in there. It just lays out all these details about Hunter and the crimes he's accused of. So he will not be able to be criminally prosecuted for any federal crimes encompassed by the facts that are contained in both the diversion agreement and the statement of facts that exists in the plea agreement. This agreement does not provide any protection against prosecution for any future conduct by Biden or by any of his affiliated businesses. All right? So once again, to summarize, so this makes a lot of sense to you, it is just simply any facts that are laid out in these documents that we're putting before the court, any of them, he can't be prosecuted for anything having to do with any of those facts. Okay, so what facts are they talking about? Let's go to the document here. The plea agreement has a series of facts laid out in it. Now, as I read these, realize what the language of all of this means is that Hunter Biden can't be charged for any of it. He can't be charged in any other federal crime for anything having to do with these items. You ready? At all times relevant to the instant information, the defendant, Robert Hunter Biden, was an attorney and businessman with lucrative domestic and international business interests. From 2017 to 2019, he served on the board of a Ukrainian energy company and a Chinese private equity fund. Okay, so right away, you see what's happening? Ukrainian energy company, it's out. You can't charge him for anything related to the Ukrainian energy company. Chinese private equity fund, that's out too. You can't charge him for anything related to that. He further negotiated and executed contracts for business and legal services that paid millions of dollars of compensation to him and or his domestic corporations, Owasco PC and Owasco LLC. Through at least early 2017, he also was employed by a prestigious multinational law firm in an of-counsel capacity. For this work, he earned substantial income, totaling more than $2.3 million in 2017 and $2.1 million in 2018. During calendar year 2017, Biden earned substantial income, including just under $1 million from a company that he formed with the CEO of a Chinese business conglomerate, $666,666 from his domestic business interests, approximately $664,000 from a Chinese infrastructure investment company, $500,000 in director's fees from a Ukrainian energy company, $70,000 relating to a Romanian business, and $48,000 from the multinational law firm. Finally, Biden continued to earn handsomely and spend wildly in 2018. He received a little over $2.6 million in business and consulting fees from the company that he formed with the CEO of a Chinese business conglomerate and the Ukrainian energy company. Okay, so everything I just read out to you, all of those details. Every last dollar, every last proper noun, every last business, every last associate, every last foreign country, all of those are now off limits if this plea deal had gone through yesterday. But it didn't. Because what happened yesterday is a federal judge finally asked questions. And in fact, she began laying out some of the details here and said, okay, wait a second. So are you saying that you aren't going to be able to charge Hunter Biden with anything else? Is that what you're saying? Oh, no, the investigation continues, the feds claimed. The Justice Department said yesterday. No, it continues. Really? Okay, so she starts to ask for an example. The judge does. She says, I'm reading now from the transcript. She goes, all right, so there are references to foreign companies, for example, in the facts section. Could the government bring a charge under the Foreign Agents Registration Act? The government attorney, the prosecutor, says, yes. The judge responds, I'm trying to figure out if there's a meeting of the minds here, and I'm not sure that this provision isn't part of the plea agreement. And so that's why I'm asking. Hunter's attorney interrupts. Your Honor, the plea agreement. The judge says, I need you to answer my question if you can. Is there a meeting of the minds on that one? Hunter's attorney says, well, as stated by the government just now, I don't agree with what the government said. The judge responds, so I mean, these are contracts. To be enforceable, there has to be a meeting of the minds. So what do we do now? The government attorney responds, then there is no deal. Okay, so here's why this all collapsed. Hunter Biden walked into that courtroom yesterday under the proper impression that he was about to be given blanket immunity from all charges. That's what happened. Hunter is sitting in that courtroom thinking there is no chance any more charges are coming. None of the attorneys thought the judge was going to ask this many questions. They thought she was going to be, as the word appears over and over, the phrase appears throughout this, rubber stamp. They thought she was going to be a rubber stamp on this plea agreement. Everybody would disappear, and the entire Biden family criminal investigation would disappear, and there would be nothing left. But that didn't happen. So when she starts asking the Justice Department, hey, any chance you could charge him with something in the future, hypothetically, is that possible? Is he still under investigation? Yes, he's still under investigation. We could charge him with something in the future. Hunter Biden's sitting there going, wait a second, that's not what I thought this was. That's not what I thought this was at all. My attorneys were told me that this was going to be blanket immunity. I wasn't going to be charged with anything. So they start freaking out. Hunter's hearing all of this. Remember, Hunter is an attorney. So Hunter's sitting there trying to cook up his own legal defense at this point. He's quoted in some of this transcript saying, no, basically he was under the impression that he wasn't going to be hit with any charges. That wasn't the deal. So this all collapses in front of the judge yesterday. The government attorneys have to stick with their story, the one where they say that Hunter may be charged in the future. Why? Because the government has to keep the case, quote, open to prevent Congress from getting access to the evidence against the Biden family. This was a scam. This was a complete scam orchestrated by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware in concert with Hunter Biden's team. I called Joe DeGeneva earlier today, and I said, Joe, do I have my head on right about this? And he said, exactly, Vince. This is exactly what's happening. The phrase he kept using when he and I were conversing, we talked to him yesterday, of course, as we got his snap reaction to everything. He kept using this phrase, a fraud upon the court. A fraud upon the court. I said, Joe, do you know any prosecutors who have ever seen an arrangement like this one, where they come in with these two documents, where the actual non-prosecution agreement is built into a separate document, where the judge is told that she can't even consider that document? Have you ever seen anything like that? He said, never. Nobody's ever seen anything like this. This is a fraud upon the court. One last detail before we jump into traffic here. That infamous paragraph 15, the non-prosecution agreement, contained not in the plea deal, but instead inside of that diversion agreement, that second document. That paragraph 15 wasn't in the document as of yesterday morning. It was kept hidden from the judge. The judge didn't know about it until just before the hearing. Why would they hide the most important paragraph from the entire deal from the judge until yesterday morning? And the reason we know that is because it's in the transcript. The judge, as a part of this conversation, says, all right, so we're going to discuss the agreement in a bit. But for now, let me say, by the way, I didn't get a copy of paragraph 15 of the agreement, but the parties provided me with a copy of that agreement prior to this hearing. So that's what I'm going to quote from at the moment. And then she goes on to talk about how it appears that paragraph 15 is granting Hunter Biden unbelievable immunity. She had the wherewithal to notice this without a whole day or even a week or anything else to review it. She got it that morning, and she made sense of it very quickly. And thank goodness she did. Let's take a phone call. We've got Matt calling in from Rockville. Line 2, Matt, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince, how you doing?
I'm good, Matt. What's up?
One of the things that we keep hearing is about a Trump-appointed judge. Well, she is a Democrat, and there is precedent to believe that everyone on the left think that she would toss this case out. Back in March, she was the person who threw out the case. I don't know if it was with prejudice or not, who threw out the defamation lawsuit filed by John Paul McIsaac, the computer repairman, against Adam Schiff, and I think CNN, Politico, and Hunter Biden were also involved. And so there is precedent to believe that she would have thrown, since she threw that case out, that she would have accepted this very sweetheart of a plea deal. And the other thing that I love about this is the left-wing media was only there to cover a routine misdemeanor deal, and it wasn't going to be anything. And, of course, the right wing's making all these terrible things up. Well, when it blew up in their faces, now they're having to go back and eat crow and cover the thing that they wouldn't have covered had they known that this plea deal would fall apart in the first place.
Yeah, look, you're right that she was the judge who threw out John Paul McIsaac's lawsuit against CNN. That is true. Also, they keep saying Trump nominated, but the reason she's in that position is because she was supported by the 2 Democrat senators from Delaware, Carper and Coons. It's the same thing with David Weiss, by the way. And because of the blue slip power of those senators, they really decide who these nominees are. Trump effectively is the rubber stamp there as the nominees go in. These were Democrat-selected positions. She's a Democrat-selected judge. And she's donated to people including Hillary Clinton, John McCain, Tom Cotton, Mitt Romney. She's kind of got donations across the board here. But interesting figure. Not what they expected yesterday. I'll tell you what the new plan is for dealing with this judge. Hunter Biden's team is cooking up a strategy, and it involves going to war. Good afternoon to you. 3:35 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL. Where we're making sense of the news. Let me tell you the guests. Coming up, we've got Pat Fallon, the congressman, will be with us at 4 o'clock from the Oversight Committee. More coming in up on Hunter Biden's plea deal yesterday. Chris Elston is here at 4:30. Billboard Chris to respond to a big hearing on general mutilation that took place in the United States House today. And Mike McCormick, former stenographer for Joe Biden, will join us at 5:30. Man who flew around the world with the then vice president. He'll react to all of the breaking news today. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. I just want to go back to something I said just as we were heading into the news. I was talking about the blue slip process, and I want to just remind everyone that when you hear the media say that the Trump-appointed U.S. Attorney David Weiss, when you hear that phrase, or you hear the Trump-appointed judge who yesterday was overseeing the Hunter Biden hearing, that judge's name not coming to me right away. Who is this judge? It was Mary Ellen. Yeah, Mary Ellen Noreika is her name. Trump-appointed judge. There is a semblance of truth to that. Trump did nominate these people. But the way it works is for that seat, that judge's seat in Delaware, or that U.S. attorney's seat in Delaware, you have to have the approval of the senators from that state in order to get these guys cleared through the Senate. It's called the blue slip process in the Senate, which makes it so that the home state senators can veto a presidential pick for either the court or the U.S. Attorney's Office. Let me put that differently. Senators Carper and Coons get to pick who are in these seats, these judges and these U.S. attorneys. So these are not Trump appointed. I mean, they are, but don't overread that term. These are Democrat selections that are in those seats because the Democrat senators from Delaware can veto anybody they want. They get to decide based on the Senate tradition, the blue slip policy. So let me just scratch off that talking point anytime you hear it anywhere in the press. But God bless this judge, Mary Ellen Noreika, for at least asking these questions. Now, how is this Hunter Biden case going to end up? It's anybody's guess. But boy, did she expose all of this yesterday, wittingly or otherwise. She truly exposed the sweetheart deal that was en route to Hunter Biden and the fraud that was being perpetrated on her on the court there. I'm going to get into what's going on with Hunter and his strategy for dealing with this judge in just a moment. But first, I'll take a phone call. I've got James calling in line one. James in Alabama. James, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. The idea that this is just a Hunter Biden personal matter really torques me because as a former DOD employee, I can tell you that if anybody in my close orbit was an unregistered federal foreign agent,
yes,
the DOD investigators would be knocking on my door. I can guarantee you. And so if the same ethics laws that govern everybody else don't govern the president and vice president, just tell us. But
yes,
don't insult our intelligence.
So in other words, James, U.S. attorneys wouldn't be telling IRS investigators, don't look into James from Alabama. No questions about that big guy, James. Don't you even dare go down that road. That would never happen for you, would it?
No, it never would. So don't insult our intelligence. I say it's just the Hunter Biden matter.
Yes. Well, yeah, and this is something I was emphasizing this yesterday too, James, to your point, which is, we talk about it, Hunter Biden's business dealings. Well, no, not really. This is Joe Biden's business dealings. That's the true story here. Hunter Biden is the bag man for Joe Biden's business dealings, the guy who's being enriched off of the bribes that he and his family are taking in order for his deliverable, which is to use American taxpayer resources to his own benefit.
Got it.
Yeah, thanks, James. I appreciate the call. It's a smart point. Hunter isn't some ordinary citizen, and Lady Justice is definitely not blind in his case. Now, Hunter Biden's team is cooking up a reaction to all of this. They are, according to Axios, they are furious. They are, in the words of Axios, fuming over how that meeting went down yesterday. Dateline, Wilmington, Delaware. Hunter Biden's legal team was angry and dejected late Wednesday after a plea deal to help the president's son avoid prison blew up into a chaotic 3-hour court hearing. Judge Mary Ellen Noreika's rejection of Biden's plea deal on tax charges ensures that legal issues will continue to shadow Biden, just as Republicans on Capitol Hill are turning up the heat in investigating him and his father. Wednesday's hearing also revealed a disconnect between Biden's lawyers and prosecutors over the terms of the plea deal, and even subtle divisions among those on Biden's side. Let me pause on that. A disconnect between Biden's lawyers and prosecutors. It's not over the terms of the plea deal. It's over how you defraud the court. That's where the disagreement is, because clearly they weren't on the same page. They weren't on the same script yesterday. But everybody involved. The claim is that these guys spent countless hours locked up in rooms together crafting this plea deal. You think they had a misunderstanding of the implications? You think they didn't realize that, oh my gosh, we were about to give him blanket immunity? Surprise! What a mistake. We should have put that comma in a different spot. We'll fix it. Come on. Hours after the hearing, Biden's team was still fuming, suggesting that Judge Noreika seemed intent on not letting the plea agreement go forward after deliberately questioning lawyers on both sides about the terms of the deal. But the judge's questioning did reveal a disagreement over whether the agreement on the tax charges was linked to a gun charge against Biden. Prosecutors said it wasn't. Biden's team thought it was, and they repeatedly argued about it in open court. Noreika frustrated those involved in the case when, after 2 hours of questioning, she said she wasn't sure whether the structure of the proposed plea deal was even constitutional. That's a bad sign. When a judge is like, hey, I don't even think this plea deal is constitutional, that probably tells you that there is no precedent for the kind of garbage these guys were trying to pull yesterday. One member of Biden's team ruefully compared Noreika to Judge Lance Ito, who presided over the O.J. Simpson murder trial in 1995 and was widely criticized for letting it become chaotic. She's just like Judge Ito. Yeah, although she didn't like cameras in the courtroom. We didn't get to watch this. Others were quick to note that Noreika was appointed to the bench by former President Trump. You heard me at the top of this segment, right? Let's just, dispense with that talking point. They suggested they'd have to take politics into consideration going forward. All right. So this is the big item here in this Axios piece. So members of Hunter Biden's team were quick to note that Noreika was appointed by Trump and then suggested they're going to have to start taking politics into account going forward. Strikes me that this is a threat to the judge. Hunter's team is contemplating a plan of attack on Judge Noreika. That's what this means. They want to attack her as a MAGA Republican. She's a Trumper, and we've got to take her down. We've got to take her down. So if Judge Noreika thought that walking out of that hearing, that she would have an easy go of it, it's just another hearing. Maybe not so much, because Hunter and the goons around him have decided to set their sights on Judge Noreika. We'll see how well that goes for them. Meanwhile, let me just pull away to some live coverage for a moment. Kevin McCarthy is speaking. I think I've got him on a live feed here.
The one thing you have watched from me from the very beginning, our debt is too high. When the Democrats had taken over and spent all that extra money that created inflation, that harmed every American, they put us on a path that we cannot continue upon. But when we had to deal with the debt ceiling, they only allowed us to deal with 11% of the budget. So any time and any single day, can we eliminate some waste and make government more accountable, more efficient, and more effective?
The reason I wanted to duck into this is not just a general indictment against the state of America under Joe Biden. It is about the impeachment conversation. McCarthy has been apparently pressuring his conference, as Marjorie Taylor Greene told us yesterday, that they are about to move towards impeachment proceedings for Joe Biden.
What's interesting to me is when we went to the debt ceiling, they couldn't tell me $1 in waste, even though we had billions of dollars appropriated from COVID, that COVID was over and not spent. That's not their money. It's the hard-working taxpayers of America. And those are the people we're looking after every single day. So it's not just the ag bill. It's any bill that comes to the floor. We are going to look at any place that we can find and save money, because we're saving the American hardworking taxpayer their money. Yes, ma'am.
Question.
Yeah.
Can't hear it.
First, let me tell you, I have no concern. I actually met with Leader McConnell twice yesterday. After this incident.
It's about his health.
I met with him at 3 o'clock. He came in. We have a regular meeting. We talk about the future legislation we have going, appropriations, what's happening in the Senate. And then later that night, there was an event on Major League Baseball where he gave a speech and I spoke after him. So no, I have no concern. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. We'll dip out of this for now. They're kind of just having negotiations about spending. You heard Speaker McCarthy, though, say a moment ago that he has no concerns about Mitch McConnell's health. McConnell, you'll recall yesterday, froze while standing in front of the press for about 19, 20 seconds on the clock and just didn't say a word. He was just staring vacantly. McConnell, earlier this year, had fallen over at a Washington hotel and had sustained a concussion. He was out of office for some time while he was recovering. This is what it sounded like yesterday as McConnell just went quiet and was staring off into the reporters.
Bipartisan cooperation and a string of
Are you good?
Okay, Mitch. Anything else you want to say, or should we just go back to your office?
Senator John Barrasso stepping up saying, "You okay, Mitch? Maybe you should go back to your office." They did take him back to his office. He eventually stepped back out. He told reporters he was fine. He made a joke last night when he saw reporters again and said he had taken a phone call from Joe Biden, and he told Biden that he had been sandbagged as a way to allude to the fact that the other elderly leader of our country, Joe Biden, had tripped over a sandbag earlier this year on a stage at the Air Force Academy. All these old people keep wiping out. There was another moment today, another old-timer, Dianne Feinstein, Di-Fi, was in the middle of, she's 90 years old, I just want to emphasize. She was in the middle of a committee meeting for a defense appropriations bill, and all of the senators were going around on whether or not they wanted to vote, and they were just supposed to say aye or nay, as you do in these. And Senator Feinstein didn't know what the rules were. She just lost her place entirely. She didn't know she was supposed to say aye, and a bunch of her aides and other senators started telling her over and over, just say aye, just say aye.
Senator Feinstein.
You say aye. Pardon me?
Aye.
Yeah.
Just say
I would like to support a yes vote on this. It provides $823 billion. That's an increase of $26 billion for the Department of Defense. And it funds priorities submitted.
Yeah, just say aye.
Okay, just
Great,
aye.
Thank you.
That was painful. She's 90 years old. I was reminded, Chris Bedford told us recently, you know that at the height of the Cold War with all these Soviet leaders that everybody would look at and, man, they're so elderly. None of them were as old as America's leaders are now. None of them. We've got all these octogenarians, or in Dianne Feinstein's case, what's the phrase? Nonagenarian? She's in her 90s. She's 90 years old. She can't say one word. Just aye. It's time to go. It's time to go. Retire and, just watch some TV or something. Just Congress is wrapping up its legislative work ahead of the August summer recess. And Speaker Kevin McCarthy is giving remarks right now and addressing in part impeachment, an impeachment inquiry at least into Joe Biden. Let's dip in and take a listen to this component of it. I say as I've queued it up, and of course it's not letting us. Anyway, forget that. That was a tech problem on my part. They are saying that this is merely an impeachment inquiry. It's an investigative process to get to the bottom of what's going on. It's not a guarantee of an impeachment, but it is the beginning of an inquiry. That's what he was talking about. We'll bring you more details as we snip some of that together for you here on the program. Let's bring in Dennis from Alabama. Let's get him on the line. He's line one. Dennis, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Just to let you know, I retired 2 years ago out of a Washington, D.C. I was a police officer there, moved to Alabama. Thank goodness. That if I had a friend, somebody I knew, acquaintance, and I knew he'd committed multiple felonies, misdemeanors, and I told him, I was like, hey, so for friends and stuff, I'm going to lock you up on a couple of the misdemeanors. I won't say anything about the felonies. As soon as the court or anybody found out, I would have been fired right away. Then I would have been charged, which I should have been. There's no difference of this U.S. Attorney's Office not going through the charges. They knew. The only reason it went bad because the judge found out about the paragraph 15.
Yes, paragraph 15.
It would have went through and everything would have been good. But since that happened, hello?
Yeah, I'm here, Dennis. So you're saying, and you said since that happened, what happened?
Yeah, since the judge found that, the prosecution was like, "Oh no, we can still charge you." It was all it's a shuffle game. Please hope it goes through. If it doesn't, we're going to say, "Oh, we did. That's not what we meant."
Yeah, whoops.
They should be brought up on investigation and been charged for what they did.
Yes, they should. They should be investigated and charged for what they did, because it sure looks like they were defrauding the court yesterday, and they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar. We will talk to Congressman Pat Fallon about this very thing coming up just moments from now. He's a member of the Oversight Committee, and he's about to share a bunch of information with the WMAL audience. Hang tight.